Welcome back to another 100 Days video where the audio is better, and this time I try to survive in a 1.20 desert. And you know what deserts have? Villages. Of course I spawned right next to one, thank god, and that will make the beginning stages much easier, especially in hardcore, not that I'm terrified. When I got closer to the village, one of the first things I saw was a camel just sitting in the middle of it, but I also ran into this creeper creeping in this cave, a great thing in hardcore. Anyways, I tried to tame the camel, assuming that's how it works, but you don't have to, so I sat on the camel for a minute, but I couldn't take it with me since I obviously had no saddle. I also wanted to tame every one of the cats that were running around, but I couldn't find any fish, and I don't even think they spawn in the desert, so sad. I completely raided the first village because that's the only way I'm going to find a crafting table, which is kind of important to the gameplay. I didn't find one in the first village, so I decided I would need to run in search of another one. Luckily, a little ways away, I found another village. This one had some more interesting crops, and by that I mean a pumpkin or melon plant, in with all their beetroot and wheat. After searching some more houses and becoming increasingly worried about not finding a crafting table, I finally saw one. However, this feeling of success did not last long because I realized I didn't have a way to get stone. I paused this thought for a moment and searched the river for fish, but there still weren't any. I ran around for a little bit longer, and then I realized what I had to do. I would need to kill an iron golem at one of the villages. I realized I could have done a creeper as well, but I didn't want to lure him into a cave or a pit of any kind, because that seems like a terrible idea. So I journeyed to a village and built a tower and cautiously hit the golem.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
It was a long while before he died to my weak punches, but when he did I got 5 iron, so I pillaged that village as well, and headed to the mountain I spawned on to close myself in a cave for mining. When I got to a cave in that mountain, it turned out to be much bigger than I had anticipated, and I got attacked by the skeleton. It's a bit concerning and I almost died. I went back up and finished blocking off my little area, then began putting all of my stolen goods down. What a beautiful home. Then I made my long-awaited pickaxe and went to strip mine when I remembered I didn't have any sort of farm, so I planted some seeds on a nearby river before heading back and mining. Soon enough I broke into a small cave that had plenty of coal for me to make plenty of torches. After clearing it, I continued digging down, and when my pickaxe was almost broken, I went back up to smelt some iron. But I didn't have any sticks, and I was too afraid to go outside, so I broke all of the dead bushes I had to make a replacement pickaxe. I used the rest of my iron to make a bucket. Not iron armor, but a bucket. Yet, somehow I had more confidence to explore behind my hay wall and clear the cave. In one of the tunnels, I came upon a massive cave, which I vowed never to return to, so I continued my strip mine and found a bunch of redstone, but no diamonds. Nevertheless, I made an iron helmet and went out to explore a massive rift that was right next to my hobbit hole. I collected some sandstone, checked out some small side tunnels, and made the slightest step into this cave before seeing a skeleton and running away. I continued mining sandstone and even stayed out a little into the evening. And was I scared? No. Mostly because I could just run back into my house through the pre-lit caves, and it was very safe. But back home I smelted some sand because I wanted to get started on a better house. And I forgot about a thing that I had discovered a while ago, and that's this. How did I not know about this much earlier? It's very useful, especially here. I harvested some cave mud, combined it with the absurd amount of wheat I got from villagers, along with the sandstone, and I began building a plan for a house. Yep, that's right, I am going to turn this sandbox into something pretty. When night fell, I did some more strip mining, and because I was out of iron, I made a stone pickaxe, and apparently that still triggers the getting an upgrade advancement. It says craft a better pickaxe, but I hardly think stone is a better tool than my nice iron pick. After a bit of breaking stone with stone, I broke into another small cave and began clearing that out. However, that also turned into a huge cave, so I ran from that as well. In a different area, I stumbled upon another scarily open area, but I lit it up because I saw a cobblestone wall that indicated a spawner of some sort. And a spawner it was, a spider spawner to be exact, so I lit that up and collected the mediocre loot. I was hoping for a saddle for my camel friend, but back on the surface I headed to the mountaintop village to steal their stonecutter when I saw a wandering trader. For a moment I forgot I already had emeralds, so I checked his trades first, and he had a mangrove sapling. This was perfect, so I went to the village to acquire some currency. Along the way I remembered I already had emeralds, so I just grabbed the stonecutter and went back home. When I got my emeralds and was ready to trade, I couldn't find the trader anywhere. I searched the whole side of that mountain and found absolutely nothing. Which is fine, it's not like I was planning to use purples and reds in my build and that sapling was the most perfect thing. No. As of recording this actually happened a while ago, and I am still mad at myself. But after giving up on that, I made a full set of iron armor, a fishing rod, and went over to the river to get fish for the hairless cat that I saw earlier. I fished for a while and got 5 fish, and I felt like I was spending too much time on this, so I went to see if that cat would love me in 5 fish or less. And it turns out it would not. So I traveled to a large body of water to check if a fish would spawn in that, and they did not. While I was swimming out there though, I saw a portal ruin, so I ventured over and didn't find a chest, and I forgot if you can break gold blocks with stones, so I left it and found another village on the shore. But when I looked around a little bit, I saw a temple. I went to the village first because the temple was on the way back home, and I was kind of hoping this village would have something OP that would protect me, and spoilers, it did not. It did, however, have wheat, which I instantly stole and traded for money. I also saw some exposed copper, which I knew was needed to make a brush, which is used in suspicious sand, which is found in temples. While waiting for that to smelt, I traded more wheat and fished in a garden bed. When the copper was finished, I looked up the recipe after trying with just copper, like this thing is a lightning rod. Anyways, it takes a stick and feather along with a copper ingot. So I continued wandering around the village, and I came across this cat, which I attempted to tame, and it worked with just 1 fish. Then me and my cat went to the temple to see and get the loot. I kind of wish cats would deter TNT like they do creepers, but I left him outside and crept into the treasure basement. I avoided the TNT and got the loot I wanted, and even found a saddle which I brought back to the village for the camel. I took a break to sleep on the mountain, and was hoping my cat would bring me a feather. She didn't bring me anything, but that's okay. Back to the camel. I thought I lost it like the wandering trader, but he was just chilling in the village. So I put a saddle on him, and I thought I might be able to put a chest on him, like a llama, but I couldn't, so I continued back home. Another thing I was hoping camels could do was swim, but they can't do that either. They do have cute little floppy ears though, so I guess I'll keep him. All the way back home with my camel, I continued building my starter house. During each night, I would go down and mine for a bit since I hadn't found any diamonds yet, and I was really trying to maximize on time. After it was completed, mostly, I moved my things out of that cave and into one of the rooms. I decorated a lot with crafting tables because they're probably the most valuable things I own. I built a wall of chests in the small room. It's a design flaw, I know. After another mining session, I found my camel and rode him to the top of the mountain where I raided the village of their beds and doors. I also stole this villager by convincing him to be a farmer. I trapped him in the bottom level and gave him some farmland. I returned to the village to get him a friend, but I saw this cat, so I had to stop to tame it, which proves to be quite difficult because it was sand-colored and sneaky. I continued to the villager I blocked in a while ago and brought him towards my house as well. When night fell, I slept in the middle of the desert with my cats, and when I woke up, one of them gave me a feather I needed for the brush. But when I was picking up my bed, I accidentally hit my poor dear cat, so I had to stop immediately and do some fishing to heal him, because I am a terrible person and I needed to regain the trust of my child. But anyways, after that, I got the second villager into the house, I gave him plenty of beds and hoped that they would repopulate. Then I made the brush I needed for suspicious sand. I decided that with this tool, I should revisit the temple I found and collect the mystery treasure that they could have. At the first temple, I found 1 sand and brushed it, but only found a piece of gunpowder. So I continued to search for another temple or a desert well that could also have the sand. I traveled for a while and came across some terrifying caves that I almost fell into. I did fall into this small cave and I took a minute to get my camel out. I found another village and cats, so I fished for a while, but I didn't get enough to tame a cat, most likely, and I didn't want to spend too much time on that since I was so far from home, so I took the valuables they had, including some books, and went on my way. Eventually, I found another temple, but it didn't have any sand, so I just took the loot in the chests and continued on. I found a well near my house, just across a river, and brushed that sand, and it gave me my first pottery shard. I kept going and found yet another village and a huge ruined portal. It was buried though, and I tried to dig it for the chest for a while, but I couldn't find it. But I did have a lot of stuff, so I went back home. Once back, I made a pen for my camel, but I had a hard time actually containing him since he could walk over 1 block. Soon though, I did get him to stay there. Then I did a mining session yet again, but this time I actually found some diamonds. I also found this cave, which I did not dare to venture very far into. But I did stay where the light was, from a dangerous lava fall, but still. I found a geode and gathered some amethyst and stones. But then I got to the really dangerous part of the cave and retreated. Back on the surface, I built a couple floors and went back to strip mining where I found another diamond after only a couple minutes. This was enough combined for a pickaxe, so I went back, but it was nighttime and there was a child waiting to kill me on my doorstep. I honestly thought I was going to die to that. I pillared up, but soon fell off and had to retreat to my house and block it off before it broke down my door. I peered out my window to see a huge horde of zombies, but they were outside my house, so I ignored them and made my diamond pickaxe. Then I moved my bed to my roof so I could sleep away my problems. In the morning, I ran into a lava pool and mined enough obsidian for a portal and an enchanting table if I could ever find another diamond. I built said portal in my current bedroom because I didn't have a lot of space. My nether spawn probably couldn't be worse. I was in a small cave that looped into itself like a donut, so I had to dig to find anything of interest. After a bit of digging, I found a 1 block tall cave looking thing that I hoped would lead to an open space. And luckily it did shortly after. I realized that I didn't have gold boots, so I pulled out my trusty crafting table and made some from gold nuggets. I continued walking and found a new biome, however it was in fact a crimson forest because of course. So I tried to get some wood without getting maimed by a hoglin. I did run into one, but it was a child one, so I chased it off and murdered it. On that scene I saw a piglin, so I traded my gold and got the usual stuff, but nothing super useful. I went back to building and finished the roof of my starter house. I did some miscellaneous detailing with the luxury of wood and expanded my house. While I was doing this, I gathered some sandstone and was adding it to the build when I was ambushed by a massive herd of zombies. I was essentially trapped on this pile of dirt, so I decided the best way out of this was just to use lava to dispose of the undead. After that was taken care of, I kept on building. Then I wanted to gather some livestock, so I took my camel to the village and bred the cows left there for future use, like leather and books. Then I added some potted plants to spice up my area, not that all the sandstone is bland. And speaking of sandstone, I continued the extension of my house. I needed more crimson wood for a tower, and while collecting it I encountered a whole bunch of hoglins. I lost some health to those guys, but escaped with my life and vowed to not return to the nether for the foreseeable future. But I did get the wood and was able to finish off that tower. Then I went to mine some gravel to make coarse dirt and to then make back into dirt. After I collected enough for my little dirt economy, I finally decided to make a better farm. And to do this I wanted to make a stream it could be next to, so I dug one connecting to a water-filled ravine. Then I piled all the coarse dirt up to make regular dirt, and to make that dirt into coarse dirt, and so on. It's a loop, you see. I almost got destroyed by another child, and then I made a hoe to actually start this farm. But I didn't finish it right away because I paused to go back to a village I thought had more crops. And of course on the way I saw a cat, so I went back to the river to fish first. However, the cat I tracked down didn't like me, so I just continued raiding the village. Then I collected some sheep to bring with me and slowly walked home. Eventually though I got back and put them in my pen with my camel. I also used the trapdoors I got from that village to finish an overhang, finally. I was about to run into my mine, but I saw yet another huge horde of zombies and various mobs, so I decided it was time to make a water elevator. I started digging down, but had the intellect to dig too wide. I hit a few big caves, but I was able to block myself off from them and I got all the way down to the level I needed to be. But later when I was trying to make the water flow in just one column, I accidentally destroyed a water source and couldn't find another, so I thought I was gonna die down there. But I figured it out, luckily, and made it back up to grab another bucket of water. Once that was complete, I did a bit of mining and went up to properly finish my farm. Then I wanted to get a bookshelf trade, so I made one of my villagers a librarian. But shortly after this he got sucked up into the water column and I had to keep him contained up there for now. I did a bit more building of my never-ending house and then made some shears so I could have some carpet. But when I was out here I also put a door in and I accidentally let all of my villagers out in the process. I took a chance and hoped they would go back to their beds at night, so I just ignored them too. I needed that carpet for the entrance. I wanted my villagers to move out of my basement, but still be kept in the castle. Not related to the current task, but I was walking by my camel, and my camel had escaped again, so I put him back inside and made the wall even taller. But anyways, in the newly completed room, I decided to make a sugarcane farm to go with the villagers. I tried to fit it in this corner, and it only gave me 3 blocks for sugarcane, but I kept it there. I didn't really have any other place for it, so what are you gonna do? One evening when I was walking on my porch, I got ambushed by a zombie and a spider, and I think it's the closest I've come to dying in this world. But I lived, and the next day I went out to get some lava to smelt glass. After I collected some, I went towards a huge gash in a mountain and found a fresh lava pool along the way. There wasn't anything interesting in that cave, and I got spooked by so many mobs. So I went back. I also ran across this oddly pretty little cave with a pool. Random, I know. Look at it. I put the finishing touches on the sugarcane farm and built the staircase to connect the 2 rooms better. I traded for a bunch of chiseled stone bricks to level my stonecutter up, but I put them to good use on the main hall floor. Then I expanded on the wheat farm because I needed that for trades, and all I see when I look at that is straight money. Then I moved my mending villager from my small entryway to the main hall, and I fell into my mine to expand the water pool because fall damage scares me. I had another adult villager at this point that I played the lectern breaking game with until he traded for a silk touch. I was in desperate need of emeralds, so I boldly went back to the nether to mine some quartz for trading. I collected a couple stacks and returned to safety. The profit from that still wasn't quite enough to get Silk Touch, so I scrounged up some more emeralds and finally got the book. However, I realized that to use it I would need an anvil and therefore more iron than this. So I went to some small tunnel caves in search of about 20 more iron. While doing this, I found a fossil in a cave that I had already lit up, so I must have just missed it before. So I collected the bone blocks, and looking back, the cooler thing to do would have been clearing the blocks around it to excavate it, but I did not do that. I decided to venture into that big cave I was afraid of earlier, and still am, but it didn't take long to find all of the iron I needed, along with a bunch of terrifying monsters. But I got out of there, smelted the iron, and made an anvil. I went down into the villager room and discovered a librarian villager drowning. I couldn't save him, so I checked the other villagers' trades, and fortunately the dead one was the Silk Touch one, and I still had the mending guy. Then I went back up to my part of the house, and found an iron golem dying. I thought about saving him, but since my iron stash had just taken a hit, I decided to let more iron just fall into my hands. At last, I combined my pickaxe and Silk Touch, which meant I was able to make my melon trades more efficient, and I stole half the grass from the village cows to have grass for my sheep. I did a bit of mining and filled in the floor in the main hall. Then my librarian was at the level that traded lanterns, which was great because I really needed more light sources, and I needed more mud, so I made this questionable tower and collected some. I collected some other materials and constructed more of the build. I took a break to mine and farm for more trades with my villagers. I also wanted to make an automatic wool farm and planned on having a shepherd villager. So I made a single stall for a sheep and set it up. I brought a baby sheep in because the adults were having trouble getting through the door. However, the outside pen they had no trouble escaping through when a zombie broke the door, so I had to wrangle some sheeps for a bit. And then it was at this point I finally realized for the first time that I could still touch the crimson grass in the nether to be able to grow them at home DIY style. So I jumped into the nether and collected a good amount of grass and mushrooms to get started, staying on the edge of the forest to avoid any potential danger. I will be okay not going back. I set up the crimson grass on the right side of my castle and bone mealed and chopped a few trees. Later, I killed a zombie and it dropped a potato, so I planted some so I could trade them away later. I also replaced the farmer's field because potatoes are much better than beetroots. Now, at this point, my pickaxe was getting dangerously low, like under 5 durability, and I even got it all the way down to 1. So I spent a while collecting emeralds to buy a 28 emerald mending book.
A few moments later.
One evening, a baby zombie with gold armor came into the castle and almost attacked my villagers, which raised my blood pressure a bit, but I killed him and all was well. Then I used my bone blocks to bone meal my wheat for trading. With that, I collected enough emeralds for the mending book and saved my poor pickaxe. Then I did a bit of building and I was almost out of emeralds and food, so I bought a cake for 1 emerald. I realized it was stupid to have my mending villager out, so I trapped him in the safety of a stall and brought another librarian out to accompany the farmer. Then I enclosed the two in the farming area and rearranged the room, making the beds into a double-decker. I did some trading so my pickaxe was at a less dead level, and I went to mine some granite so I could keep building. After, I collected more dirt because I realized that the melons can't grow into sand, and I had some planted at my original farm that were not growing for like many days. I went back and leveled up my librarian to then trade books, so I decided to trade my stash away, which probably wasn't wise, but I got 6 emeralds out of it, so... But after that, he only gave me ink sacks and sweeping edge for my troubles. Then I finished off this overhang thing and continued expanding outward. After a bit of building, I made a fletching table and turned a significant portion of my wood into sticks. Then I traded all of them with my new Fletcher. Then I had to get him into a stall, and he was the most stubborn villager I've had to deal with so far. A side note here, I realized after recording this whole thing that fishermen villagers will trade you a campfire for like 2 emeralds, and since I'm in the desert, that would have been invaluable. All the missed detailing opportunities. Sad. I'll get over it one day, but anyways. I had bought a bunch of lanterns to level my librarian up, but all he gave me was an ink sack trade, and another more expensive mending trade. I decided to replace bricks with a window in my little house because the solid wall made the room feel too cramped. I built a couple towers and added a window in my house. When I was standing on the edge to add some upside down stairs, I saw a baby husk, so of course I decided I had to kill it. Then I did some organizing and indoor stuff. Then I was walking outside at night like an idiot when a creeper blew up behind me and demolished a part of the villager house wall. For some unknown reason, I ignored that for the moment, so I could see what the window I built looked like from the outside. Still at night, so a zombie attacked me, followed by a herd of zombies, and I was in a slight ditch, so I lost half my health before I was able to climb out and escape. I ran inside my main hall, and a creeper followed me, and it was able to walk under my mob-proof entrance, so I had to block it off. I went to my villager room and came upon a zombie hitting the villager, and the villager was walking right into it. I pushed him away and killed the mobs that had collected in the doorway, and I went to break the dirt in my entrance from the creeper, and when I came back there was another zombie in the building since I still hadn't blocked out the hole from that first creeper of the night. I was able to kill all of the bad things leaking in and rebuild the broken wall. After this, I decided I need to light up my area to fight the massive amount of desert monsters. While I was adding lanterns outside, I saw a wandering trader, so immediately I ran over to see that he sold mangrove and birch saplings. But I am poor and didn't have any emeralds, so I spent a while harvesting crops and acquiring money. Luckily, the trader hadn't left by the time I'd gotten my crap together, so I bought a propagule. However, I still wanted more. So I kept on farming, and that night I continued the lantern project, and I found the trader lived. So I continued the farming cycle until eventually I got one of each sapling, including jungle saplings, which I forgot to mention before. I had one of everything, but I wanted extra just in case, so I got as many as I could until I felt I had enough. I planted one of each sapling and chopped them down, and I got plenty of saplings from each tree except the jungle one, so I stood there and watched until all of the leaves except the last one fell with no saplings. And seriously, when I turned around, like this, around to check for creepers or other mobs, the last leaf fell and I had 0 jungle saplings. The trader villager was still hanging around though, so I scraped some money together again and bought another sapling. I also got tired of the crimson tree remnants when I was running around this area, so I tested their flammability. This time the jungle tree also didn't drop a sapling, but nonetheless I made my jungle logs into trapdoors and did some decorating. I also put my birchwood to good use and redid the sheep portion of my pens. But the animals weren't separated yet, so I had to painstakingly do that. Then I made a grindstone for a villager's job and refreshed the trade and had to break a loom on a different floor because villagers are stupid. But I got an iron axe trade for 2 emeralds, so I locked the trade and locked him in a stall. Then I went outside and found my camel loose again, so I built the fence up to contain this absolute beast. But the point of going outside was to go into the caves to gather the unmined coal to trade. But I realized my silk touch pickaxe wouldn't work for such a task, so I made an iron one as a replacement. After depleting the small tunnel caves, I ventured into that big cave and collected even more coal. And I collected some dirt, but I also found some coal behind that too. Afterwards, I got out of there and didn't even die. I had enough coal to get through the first level, but it only got me to the iron and bell trade, and neither of those were viable options for my iron/emerald budget. I did get the axe trade to 1 emerald though, so I traded that a couple times, but I took a break from trading to do some outdoor decor, including digging a path, placing bushes and moss carpets around, and filling in the path with dirt. I also put the mangrove roots under the bushes so the sand wouldn't show so much, and because I had way too many roots. I traded, I built some stuff, then I went to look for the camel from the village on my mountain since my OG camel was from the one across the river and I had an extra saddle. I went up the mountain and found the camel fairly quickly after mining some exposed sandstone. I also saw this cat nearby, but I didn't have any fish and it was turning night, so I went home with a friend for my camel. The next day I chopped some trees and decorated with mangrove and carpet. I did some interior decorating and moved some stuff around since I had more space and I hadn't really expanded my stuff outside my starter area. And then, you guessed it was back to building and gathering materials. It's a lot of sandstone. When I ran out of sandstone, I gathered wood for trading from my mangrove trees. And again, I stupidly stayed out too late and faced the consequences by way of mobs. I filled in the craters with roots and added some as a mini pathway across the water by the stairs. Then I put my loom to good use and converted a villager into a shepherd. I refreshed the trade until I got one with white wool and shears. I locked in the trade and I put him in a cozy little stall and went to the nether where I got some lava and grabbed some spare glowstone. When I was heading back, I noticed a chicken, which usually would be the most useless thing, but since I'm in the desert, this is the only place to find them, I think. So I sprinted back to my house to grab seeds and returned to luckily find the chicken was still there. I was trying to bring him and him alone back, but this pigling got pushed along with him, but the chicken darted around him at a corner, so I didn't have to have a pig roommate at the castle. I led him all the way back through my tunnels to my portal and put him under some stairs in the newest part of the castle. But anyways, I went on that trip initially to get lava, and I got lava to smelt the axes because I'm that desperate for iron to trade, and I had a lot of axes at this point. However, this plan didn't really work unless I had an automatic way to put every individual axe in, so I invested 5 iron into a hopper and kept smelting axes. I did get enough iron from that experiment for 1 trade, and a few iron nuggets in change. But I still needed a more efficient source of income, so I went back to work building another sheep stall and automatic farm. After a bit of rearranging, I got 2 stalls in the corner and had to now get a sheep in the second one. As you have probably noticed, sheep have problems with doors, and I didn't want to let my villagers out again, so I bred them and took the baby sheep that wiggled through the doorway. This means the wool farm won't be profitable for a bit if I use them, but I think that's well worth my sanity. However, when I was actually trying to get the sheep in, 2 others followed, and I had an adult along with 2 children somehow, one of which grew up when I accidentally fed it some wheat. But after a painful time wrangling sheeps, I got one of the 3 in a stall, and instead of making another hopper and minecart, I made powered rails and ran a track underneath both. The other 2 sheep were still hanging out in that room, so I trapped one because that's all I had room for, and made it stall automatic as well. I got the excess sheep out of my house and did a bit of farming. Then I took a bed from the villagers and decorated my room, mostly for the sake of my cats. Then I remembered the spider spawner I had found like 2 decades ago in the early days of this, so I counted the blocks and made a tunnel that would lead down to it from inside my castle, or what would eventually be inside. It was in an unfinished room because, of course, but I dug this basic tunnel down and reached the cave. I lit it up with shroom lights so I would be kind of safe, and I stumbled upon this geode, so I broke in and collected some more amethyst along with calcite and basalt. But distractions aside, I began digging the spawner room. I also saw a creeper because I only made sure I was kind of safe here. I went back up to do some miscellaneous things. I made a loom for a new villager, but he wasn't really interested, so I left him to consider the job offer and made a good amount of stairs to add a little polish to the tunnel. I finished the spider spawner and broke the light but made it out alive and spent some time killing spiders. Not for too long though, since I did only have one thing with mending on it so far, and I really wanted to get back and finish the build, but before I could do that I had a stubborn librarian to deal with, so I refreshed the trade until I got something decent, which was an Unbreaking 3 book for 13 emeralds. I bought a book and added it to my diamond pick, then I gathered some materials and continued on the build. I sheared some vines and added them to the castle to add some more color to the endless pale yellow. Then I added the outdoor patio floor with the mangrove and spent a couple days gathering materials and placing them on the castle. After the bulk of the building was done, I made some detailing blocks out of mangrove and detailed the new addition of the castle. I also added another tower. I know it's been a lot of block placing, but after this I only have one last tower, I promise. I added some floors and then I built said final tower. Then I returned to building floors and finishing up any loose ends of the build. Then I wanted to convert a farmer and a leather worker to set up a potato farm in a newly finished room. I accidentally let one out in the process. I tried to get him where I wanted to by baiting with a composter, but inside I saw this cat, so I just had to drop everything and go fishing. During which point I got this lily pad, and soon after a few fish. However, I couldn't find that cat, or my villager, for that matter. I ran around frantically until I found him by the animal pen and put him back inside. I was able to get him in the room and I went back to get his friend. Then I excavated part of the hill to make way for a potato farm outside the room. When I came back, there was a freaking child zombie that almost killed me, and I was worried he decimated my villager population. And when I was on this pillar to escape, a creeper blew it up and I almost died again. After killing everything dangerous and bad, I went to check on my semi-free-range villagers. They were all fine. I didn't check on my stall villagers, and no, I didn't see this until a little later after I collected some dirt and set up a complete potato farm. Then I noticed the undead villager sitting in my castle. I stood and stared at him, and considered venturing to find another fortress and carrying him since I had so much money invested in this guy. But I was worried about him despawning, so I made a name tag called Arnold. Shortly after, though, I realized that was a missed opportunity, so I renamed it Dinnerbone. With that done, I made the necessary preparations, and for some reason before I left, I had to fill this crater in with water to make it pretty, and then I went into the nether. I dug in a new direction since I very much did not want to go through the Crimson Forest of Death, and after a little ways, I broke out into a basalt delta, but I ran into a nether waste because that seemed safer. I stopped along the way to mine quartz to heal my pickaxe. Then I ran for a ways trying to avoid lava as much as possible. After a few minutes I came across a fortress, fortunately not above lava. I broke in and started exploring hallways. I made sure to block the entrances so no wither skeletons could kill me. I found a few chests at first and some nether wart which I collected until I realized I didn't need it for the weakness potion, so I continued and found a saddle, smithing template, and some diamonds along with other less important things in chests, until I cleared everything and I went to a different area and found an enclosed blaze spawner. I tried to go about it as safely as possible, but I did get hit a couple times and feared for my life. I was able to get one blaze rod after a few blaze deaths, but I needed one more for the minimal potions I needed to make, so I trapped this one lone blaze that had wandered out of the main spawning area. I messed it up a little, but I was able to kill it, and it dropped a blaze rod. I was very excited to be able to leave, and after celebrating, I ran right out of there, and all the way back to the basalt next to my portal, where I gathered some new blocks, and returned to my castle of safety. After putting some stuff away, I made the smithing table to use the new templates I got. I experimented with how it worked and how different crystals looked on iron armor since I am still poor. I decided to use gold to fit the yellow vibe and put that on my chest plate and helmet. Then I tried to make a brewing stand, and of course I didn't know the recipe, but I figured it out by looking it up, and made that along with starting some weakness potions. I also had this extra villager be a cleric, so I could trade away my rotten flesh for cash. Once the potions were done, I began curing Arnold, and since I had more diamonds from the fortress, I made an enchanting table and diamond boots. This left me with 1 diamond, which I used for a diamond shovel since I am in the desert and sand is everywhere. I added a new floor in the middle of my castle and placed my table in the middle of the floor. I checked on the enchantments, but obviously I had no bookshelves, so they were pretty crappy. A minute later, Arnold had returned to normal and his trades were improved, so I traded some coal, got iron axes, and I traded some iron to level him up, which only actually cost 3 iron thanks to his zombie trades. But all of this was only to get a flint trade, which seemed like the best way to level him up to get a diamond tool trade. So I collected gravel, and I thought my Fletcher had a gravel to flint trade that would help me, but he didn't, so I tried to make another Fletcher, but I was fresh out of villagers. So I reverted to building gravel towers to break into flint. This was an inefficient tactic, and I only got enough for 1 trade, so I went looking for extra iron in a nearby cave. But it looked like a death trap, so I avoided it. It did have a cool waterfall though, and I thought the castle needed one, so I made one real quick, falling into a cave by the newest side of the castle. I did some trading and bought a bell which I hung from the ceiling. I got bored of Arnold, so I rearranged my collection of blocks and moved some chests and my smithing table to the room by the entrance to my spider farm. I smelted a bunch of axes again and got enough for 2 ingots, which I traded along with some of my dwindling iron stash. This ended up being worth it, I think, because it was enough to level Arnold up, and he traded an efficiency 2 diamond axe for 1 emerald. I bought as many as he would sell me since it was such a good deal. I went back to check on my potato farmer and found him getting hit by a husk, so I saved him and mob-proofed the area some. I went back to do more business with Arnold, but he raised his prices, and the only other trade at that level was a diamond for an emerald, and I wasn't doing that, so I put my shovel to work and went back to breaking gravel. I was scanning the caves, and I found some coal and iron along with the gravel. I mined my coal until my iron pick broke, and I looked over the ledge of this massive cave. I forgot my cat wasn't sat down somewhere, and it teleported just then, right in the most dangerous spot, so that was a small heart attack, but I returned to Arnold and traded everything I got. These efforts got us to the last level, and I bought a sharpness 2 diamond sword, again just for 1 emerald. I bought some lanterns and lit up the newer rooms better, then I did some decorating, adding some tables and counters mostly out of basalt. I added flower pots and then got distracted from that. I made a bunch of different colors of dye from the new flowers I had, and a side story, I fell into my mine and found a glow squid. But with those dyes I made more dyes, and then added the flowers and makeshift trees to the flower pots, along with the amethyst and sea pickles. Then I finally used those dyes to make a bunch of colored carpets and put together an abstract colorful carpet to go in my main hall. I used the extra carpets around my castle as bonus decorations. While doing this, I went to my potato farm and found my farmer zombified, so I killed the zombifier, and I needed a golden apple to cure him, so I chopped down some birch trees trying to get an apple since my other farmer didn't trade for them. But after a minute, I thought about it and remembered I had a golden apple in a chest. So I grabbed a potion and went to cure my zombie guy. I did that successfully, but then I went into the farm from the outside and watched my farmer to keep an eye on him, just in case he was able to escape somehow. But of course he charged me since he's a zombie, and I got down to 1.5 hearts. I was able to escape, but the villager was outside, so he burned to death. He was so young. To calm myself down, I did some detailing with birch signs, more carpet, and redesigned some plants. I added more tables and the usual decorative items I could make with what I had. Then I chopped trees solely for the purpose of leaves because I wanted to make a nice garden in my front yard, along with some custom trees. After collecting a bunch of leaves, I used some extra bone meal to make my little stream more interesting. While I was doing this, it turned into the evening and a husk spawned, and when I killed it, it dropped a carrot. So I planted that and bone mealed it. Then I made more coarse dirt and added another layer to my farm to make room for the carrots. I also added this extra farm for carrots on the side hill where my potato farm was. I filled in that field and made another row of melons, which I probably should have done much earlier. Then I used my jungle wood to make fences and built this small palm tree. I added some birch leaves to my glass window to finish it off, and put some more vines coating my castle in green. I planted a mangrove tree behind my castle for more contrast against the mountain. I dug a path out to my future garden, and started adding bushes and various plants across my whole yard. I built a border of mangrove leaves, mossified the stream banks, and made some small trees in the empty garden space. I placed a similar small palm in between the potato and carrot farms, then I made one last tree by the animal pens. It was bigger than the others because I was out of jungle and used mangrove roots instead. While building this, I had to get back up to the top for the leaves, so I pillared up and tried to jump but missed and lost a considerable amount of health. I traded for some food and bought a bookshelf while I was there for my enchanting table. Unfortunately, it didn't really help with the enchantments, so I finished off the trees and added some greenery to my camel and sheep pens, as well as around my castle some. It was getting late, but I felt the need to do more decorating. I finished the villager floor just in time for them to barely enjoy it, and it was getting to the end of the 100 days, but there was one last thing I just had to do. I went to the nearest village to get their camel. I took her back and introduced her to my camel. I gave them both some cactus and they made a tiny child camel. I took some more cactus from my defensive wall and gave it to the baby camel. Then it sat down and I awed at its cuteness. But that brings us to the end of this 100 days in the desert. I did the usual walkthrough of my area and said farewell to all of my pets and villagers, even the dead farmer's widow. I think this series went surprisingly well for hardcore, I would say. It is on a snapshot, otherwise I think I would do a 200 days follow-up, but maybe I'll do that with a different world at some point in the desert once the full update is out. But that is all the time that I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.